I stood at the far end of the mahogany boardroom table, my cardboard box of personal belongings feeling heavier with every passing second. Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Global, a man whose suits cost more than my annual salary, leaned back in his leather chair, a predatory smirk playing on his lips. "Elias, let's be real," Marcus said, his voice echoing off the glass walls that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. "You were never executive material. You're a quiet little mouse. You crunch numbers, you stay in your hole, and you don't make noise. But mice get caught in traps, don't they?" He tossed a stapled document onto the table. It was the Project Phoenix contract I had signed 3 months ago. At the time, Marcus told me it was a confidentiality bridge, a simple formality to ensure I was protected while handling the firm's most sensitive offshore accounts. He'd told me it was a fake contract just for the auditors to look at, a placeholder, while the real legal team drafted my promotion. "You signed it, Elias," Marcus sneered, his eyes scanning the other board members who refused to look me in the eye. "By signing this, you admitted full personal liability for the $40 million shortfall in the Cayman accounts. You didn't just fail this company, you robbed it, and I have the contract to prove you authorized every single illegal transfer." The board members began to murmur. I saw the security guards moving toward the door. I looked at the document. My signature was there, bold and clear. Marcus had used my loyalty as a weapon, framing me for the massive embezzlement he had committed himself. He thought he had found the perfect scapegoat, the humble, quiet analyst with no family and no voice. "You're fired, effective immediately," Marcus barked, standing up. "And don't bother going home. The police are already at your apartment. You'll be lucky if you see the sun again before you're 60. I didn't tremble. I didn't beg. I reached into my pocket and touched the cold metal of a flash drive. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and for the first time in 5 years, I smiled. "You're right, Marcus," I said softly. "I am a quiet man, but you forgot one thing about quiet people." Marcus paused, his hand on the door handle. "And what's that, loser?" "We listen." As the security guards grabbed my arms, I saw Marcus's phone buzz on the table. The look of triumph on his face flickered just for a millisecond into a shadow of confusion. The elevator doors opened, but it wasn't the police coming for me. It was a man in a black suit holding a sealed yellow envelope. To understand how I ended up in that boardroom, you have to understand the 5 years of hell I endured at Sterling Global. I wasn't just an employee. I was Marcus Sterling's shadow. I was the one who stayed until 3 a.m. fixing his mathematical errors. I was the one who drafted the proposals he took credit for in front of the shareholders. "Elias, get me a coffee, black, no sugar, and hurry up. You're slower than my grandmother's dial-up," Marcus would yell across the open plan office. He loved public humiliation. He once made me stand for 2 hours during a gala just to hold his coat because he didn't trust the cloakroom. I was replaceable. I was nobody. I was the poor man who lived in a studio apartment while Marcus bought his 3rd villa in Tuscany. My colleagues, sensing Marcus's disdain, treated me like office furniture. I'd overhear them in the break room. "Why does Elias even stay? He has the brains of a genius and the spine of a jellyfish." I stayed because I was learning. I was watching how Marcus moved money. I saw the shadow ledgers he thought he'd hidden behind 3 layers of encryption. I saw how he bullied vendors and cheated on his taxes. Every time he insulted me, I didn't get angry. I got curious. 3 months ago, Marcus called me into his private office. He looked panicked. "Elias, I need a favor. We're doing a secret merger. The auditors are being difficult. I need you to sign this Project Phoenix indemnity waiver. It's a dummy doc, just to get them off our backs. It won't even be filed. If you do this, the senior VP spot is yours." I knew it was a lie. I knew the moment I saw the header that Project Phoenix was the name of his embezzlement shell company. He wanted my name on the crime. He thought he had found the perfect scapegoat, the humble, quiet analyst with no family and no voice. Now, back in the present, Marcus stared at the man in the black suit who had just entered the boardroom. "Who are you?" Marcus demanded. "Security, get this man out of here." The man ignored him and looked at me. "Mr. Thorne, I'm from the office of the district attorney. We received your email chain backup in the decrypted files." "This is a mistake," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. He ripped open the envelope, his hands shaking. He expected to see a lawsuit or a summons. Instead, he pulled out a deed paper. It wasn't a deed to a house. It was a deed to the very land the Sterling Global headquarters sat on. "What is this?" Marcus hissed, looking at me. "This is a fake. I own this building." "You own the company, Marcus," I said, stepping away from the security guards who had instinctively loosened their grip. "But the land? That belonged to your late father's holding company, the one you tried to liquidate last year to cover your gambling debts in Macau." The board members leaned in, their faces masks of shock. The trigger incident hadn't just been the firing, it was the realization that Marcus had been playing a high-stakes game with assets that weren't his. When Marcus had forced me to sign that fake contract, he'd made a fatal error. He used a template from his father's old legal files, a template that contained a reversionary clause. By naming me as the primary S&E for the Project Phoenix debts, he had inadvertently triggered a clause in his father's trust that transferred the land rights to the active manager of debt liabilities if the primary heir, Marcus, was found to be in moral or financial default. Marcus had spent so long trying to frame me for his theft that he had legally defined me as the person in charge of his mess. And in the world of old money trusts, the person who cleans the mess gets the keys to the kingdom. "You think this piece of paper changes anything?" Marcus roared, slamming his fist on the table. "I'll have you arrested for fraud. You stole those files. You forged this." "I didn't have to forge anything, Marcus," I replied calmly. "I just read the fine print you were too arrogant to check." Suddenly, the boardroom doors swung open again. This time, it wasn't just one man, it was 4 federal agents in wind brackets with FBI emblazoned in yellow on the back. "Marcus Sterling, you are under investigation for money laundering and wire fraud. Don't move." The room erupted into chaos. Flashbulbs from the hallway, where the press had somehow been tipped off, flickered through the glass. Marcus was being handcuffed, screaming about his lawyers and his worthless analyst. But then, the lead agent turned to me. "Elias Thorne, you're coming with us too. We found $5 million in a secret account under your name this morning. The Project Phoenix contract Marcus provided us yesterday clearly states you were the mastermind." The board members gasped. My ally, the lawyer from the DA's office, looked at me with a worried expression. "Elias, if that money is in your account, the land deed won't save you. You'll be going down with him." Marcus started laughing, a jagged, manic sound. "You thought you were so smart. I planted that money weeks ago. The contract is signed, the money's in your name, and you're the one going to a federal pen, not me." I was cornered. The FBI agent reached for his cuffs. HR was already drafting a public statement blaming me for everything. My bank accounts were frozen. My reputation was being shredded in real time on the news ticker at the bottom of the TV screen in the corner of the room. The board members began to chant for my removal. "He's a thief! He's a fraud!" I felt the cold steel of the handcuffs click onto my right wrist. The crisis had hit. Everyone in that room thought I would break. They thought the quiet man would finally cry and confess. Instead, I looked at the FBI agent. "Check the timestamp on the transfer, Agent Vance." "We did," Vance said. 9 a.m. this morning." "Now," I said, "check the CCTV footage from the Sterling Global server room from 8:59 a.m. I pulled a small remote from my pocket and pressed a button, turning on the giant boardroom projector. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't the main server room. It was Marcus Sterling's private office. The video was crystal clear. It showed Marcus sitting at his desk, sweating, typing furiously on a laptop that wasn't his. He was using a hidden safe key to unlock a drawer, pulling out a specialized hardware wallet, and manually transferring the $5 million into an account. But there was more. The audio, captured by the tie clip bug I'd planted, was high fidelity. "This will kill 2 birds with 1 stone." Marcus's voice boomed through the boardroom speakers. "Elias gets the blame, the FBI gets their mastermind, and I get to keep the remaining $35 million in the Zurich vault. That pathetic little mouse won't even know what hit him. He actually signed the fake contract. He's as dumb as he looks." The room went silent. Again. The FBI agent stopped. He looked at the screen, then at Marcus, then at me. "How did you get this footage? This office is supposed to be on a private, unhackable circuit." "I'm not just an analyst, Agent Vance," I said, my voice steady. "Before I came to work for Marcus, I spent 4 years as a forensic systems auditor for the Treasury. I didn't hack him, I just rebuilt the bridge he thought he'd burned." I reached into my box of belongings and pulled out a thick, leather-bound accountant's ledger. I flipped it open to a page with Marcus's personal seal. "This is the real ledger," I said, "the one Marcus thought he shredded. I spent 6 months taping it back together, piece by piece. It contains every transaction, every bribe to the board, and the true location of the missing $40 million. The CFO, who had been Marcus's biggest supporter, froze. Only the owner and the lead auditor knew about that ledger. Marcus said it was destroyed in the 2022 fire. "Marcus lies," I said. "I record." The FBI agent released my wrist. He turned his attention fully to Marcus, whose face was now the color of spoiled milk. "Mr. Sterling," Vance said, "I think we need to have a much longer conversation. But first, there's someone else you should meet." The door opened, and a woman in a sharp gray suit walked in. She wasn't a cop. She was Sarah Sterling, Marcus's estranged sister, the one he had told everyone was mentally unfit and living in an asylum. "Hello, Marcus," her voice like ice. "Did you miss me?" Marcus looked like he'd seen a ghost. You're supposed to be in Switzerland. I have the medical papers." "You mean the fake documents you forged to steal my share of the inheritance," Sarah replied. She turned to me and nodded. "Thank you, Elias. If you hadn't sent me that audio file 3 weeks ago, I would still be trapped in that clinic you were paying to keep me quiet." The board members were reeling. The twist was devastating. Marcus hadn't just embezzled from the company, he had kidnapped his own sister's life to maintain total control of the Sterling empire. But then Sarah dropped the real bomb. "The fake contract you made Elias sign, Marcus, you used the 2018 bylaw amendment template. You thought it was just an indemnity form, but Elias and I had a little chat before he signed it." She looked at the board. "Under Section 9, Clause B of that specific template, which Marcus himself legalized 5 years ago to screw over a different partner, any employee who signs an indemnity waiver for company-wide losses while also holding a land deed reversion automatically becomes the interim chairman if the current CEO is arrested for a felony." The room spun. Marcus's attempt to frame me had triggered a legal, self-executing clause. By trying to make me responsible for his crimes, he had legally handed me his chair. Marcus let out a guttural scream and lunged at me, but the FBI agents tackled him to the floor. As they dragged him out, he screamed, "It's not over! You forged the signatures! I'll burn this whole place down!"
The aftermath was a whirlwind. Marcus was in custody, but his puppets were still in the building. Within hours, the narrative began to shift. A mysterious leak hit the internet. A series of doctored photos appeared showing me in secret meetings with foreign competitors. A confession letter, supposedly written by me, was found in my desk drawer by HR. "The board is voting to void the contract," the CFO told me, his face smug. "We're claiming coercion. We're saying you manipulated Marcus into signing those templates. We filed a $100 million countersuit against you, Elias. You might have the land, but we have the lawyers. And we're going to frame you so hard you'll be the most hated man in America by midnight." They were hunting me now. They tried to lock me out of the building. They sent private security to my apartment to retrieve the ledger. I spent the night in a cheap motel watching as news anchors debated whether I was a hero or a master manipulator who had staged a corporate coup. But I wasn't hiding. I was building a trap. I sat on the edge of the motel bed with a laptop, looking at an old phone recording from 5 years ago, the day I was hired. I had recorded the orientation, specifically the part where the head of HR explained the company's deep cloud backup system. The board thought they had deleted the evidence. They thought they had destroyed the original fake contract. They didn't realize that Sterling Global used a forensic mirror system. Every document scanned in the building was backed up to a server in a different state, a server that required 2 biometric keys to access. One key belonged to the CEO. The other, it belonged to the longest-serving analyst. I wasn't just the quietest man in the room. I was the one who had been there the longest. The emergency board meeting was held at midnight. They wanted to vote me out before the sun rose. The CFO stood at the head of the table. "Elias Thorne is a fraud," he told the gathered shareholders via Zoom. "We have proof he forged the land deed. We have proof he manipulated the CEO. We're moving to terminate his interim status and appoint—" The doors swung open. I walked in carrying a single sealed envelope. "The vote is over," I said. "You have no standing here," the CFO yelled. "Security, remove him." "Wait," an honest judge said from the back of the room. I had invited him. "Let's see what Mr. Thorne has in the envelope." I walked to the projector and plugged in a flash drive. "You claim I forged the documents. You claim Marcus was coerced, but let's look at the metadata." I projected a file on the screen. It was the original Project Phoenix contract, but I didn't show the text. I showed the author property. Author, CFO, admin, personal laptop. Created 4 a.m. the night before I was fired. The room went dead silent. The CFO's face turned gray. "And here," I said, playing an audio file, "is the CFO talking to Marcus's lawyer 10 minutes ago, discussing how much of the $40 million they were going to split once I was in jail. We just need to burn the physical copy. The kid has no proof. We'll tell the judge he's a schizophrenic who dreamt the whole thing." The judge stood up. "I've seen enough. CFO, you are under arrest for conspiracy and tampering with evidence." But as the police moved in, the CFO laughed. "It doesn't matter. The $40 million is gone. You can have the company, Elias, but it's bankrupt. We emptied the vaults an hour ago."
The CFO was grinning, even as the cuffs went on. "You won a hollow shell, Elias. The money is in an untraceable crypto mixer. By the time the sun comes up, Sterling Global will be a ghost." I looked at him, then at the board members who were already packing their bags. "You're right," I said. "The money is gone from the company accounts." I reached into the sealed envelope and pulled out a final document. It was a hidden letter from the founder, Marcus's father. Marcus's father knew his son was a snake. He knew Marcus would try to drain the company one day, so he created a shadow trust, a secondary vault that only activates if the primary accounts hit a zero balance due to unauthorized transfers. I pointed to the screen. A new bank balance appeared. $150 million. The $40 million you stole? That was the trigger. By draining that account, you automatically transferred the founder's entire private estate into the company's operating fund. And because I am the interim chairman under the Project Phoenix clause, I paused, letting the weight of the moment sink in. I am now the sole trustee of that $150 million. The company isn't bankrupt. It's the wealthiest it's ever been. And since you all just voted to sever all ties with anyone involved in the Project Phoenix scandal, I looked at the board members. You all just fired yourselves. You have no shares, no severance, no jobs. The cliffhanger hit like a physical blow. The board members realized they had signed their own termination papers in their rush to frame me. But then, the most unexpected thing happened. Sarah Sterling stood up and looked at me. There's one more clause, Elias, the one my father left for the quiet man. Sarah walked to the head of the table. She pulled out a DNA test paper. My father didn't just leave a trust, she said. He left a confession. He had a son he never acknowledged, a son he watched from a distance, making sure he was humble, hardworking, and honest. He didn't want Marcus to know because he knew Marcus would kill him. She handed the paper to me. I already knew what it said. I had known for years. Elias Sterling isn't just an analyst, she told the stunned room. He is Elias Sterling, my brother, the rightful heir to this entire empire. The karma was absolute. Marcus was headed to maximum security prison for life. The board members were broke and blacklisted from the industry. The CFO was facing 20 years for conspiracy. I sat in the chairman's chair. I didn't feel powerful. I felt at peace. I took the fake contract, the one Marcus had used to try and destroy me, and I framed it. I hung it right in the lobby of the building, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A month later, I visited Marcus in prison. He looked older, broken. "Why?" he hissed through the glass. "Why didn't you just tell me who you were? We could have ruled together." I looked at him and shook my head. "Because you wouldn't have listened. You only see what people have, Marcus. You never see who they are." I stood up and walked away, leaving the shadow of the Sterling name behind. I stayed quiet, I stayed humble, and I rebuilt the company into something honorable. They called me nobody. They called me replaceable. They thought I was just a mouse in a trap. Moral? Never underestimate the quiet man. He isn't weak. He's just waiting for you to finish talking so he can rewrite the ending. Karma does not forget, and it certainly doesn't miss.